All right, we always say, no time like the present. Might as well jump right into it. It's the Panther-Lair Show here on a Tuesday night live on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Of course, you listen to the podcast through the week. We appreciate that as well. We like the video viewers and the audio listeners. It all works. A minute or two late getting started here. I got this terrible problem with my laptop. And it's not a permanent enough problem that I need to go out and buy a new one, but it's getting to that point. My control key is incredibly unreliable. So I'll highlight a passage in Microsoft Word or something like that, and I'll click Control-C to copy it or Control-Z to copy it, and it erases the whole passage and replaces it with a C or a Z because the control button doesn't always work, and it's incredibly frustrating to deal with. I mean, I use the control functions a lot. Control-A, Control-Z, Control-X, Control-C, occasionally Control-Y, Control-B, Control-I. I mean, use these things a lot. Not so much Control-U, but either way, is a major problem. And so I was trying to get some things set up here in advance of the show this evening, and ran into some problems with that. I had to figure out some workarounds like the old right click, but who has time for that? You know, I'm trying to hit the control button and get moving so we can get started on this week's Panther-Lair Show. We've got a ton to talk about. Of course, as always, certainly Pitt basketball team continues to give us a lot to talk about, unfortunately. Football team, I think there's some things we should talk about there as well, some recruiting topics we need to hit on. We got a lot to cover, as we always do, I think, week after week here on the Panther-Lair Show. So I appreciate everybody who's tuning in. You're jumping in on the live stream at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can join the conversation in the chat box there. You can post your questions or your comments. We can have a little conversation about Pitt sports, which is always kind of the fun part of doing these live streams, is that, you know, we can have some back and forth. And I know I might talk for a while and take some time before I get to your comments and questions, but we get to them. If you want to make sure your comments and questions get heard and get seen and get discussed here on the air, you can use that super chat function down at the bottom, that little $sign there. Throw a couple bucks to the podcast, support us. We certainly appreciate that. We'll make sure we get to your comments and questions if you do that. So if you got anything you want to say, you got anything you want to ask, got anything you want to offer about Pitt basketball, Pitt football, Pitt recruiting, whatever's on your mind tonight, jump in there. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast later in the week, you have anything you want to say or, you know, questions or comments, you can post them later on Twitter or on the message boards. But the best way to do it is just jump right in the mix on the Panther-Lair Show on Tuesday nights, every Tuesday night at 8:30. We had the last couple of weeks where we were going on Wednesday nights, but we had to switch it up because the basketball games being on Tuesday nights. This week, Pitt plays on Wednesday nights. We're back to our regular night of Tuesday evening. Of course, I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. I'd like to think if you're tuning into this podcast, tuning into this live stream, you know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. We cover it all at Panther-Lair.com, and I like to think we cover better than anybody. And of course, we have message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. I think it's the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find for conversation, for discussion, for back and forth and talking about Pitt sports and everything else going on in the world of Pitt football, basketball, recruiting. We got Olympic sports boards. We got wrestling boards. If you are looking for a Pitt conversation, the place to go is Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And when you're at Panther-Lair.com, you're going to see a little ad there, a little billboard for our friends at Homefield Apparel. And these guys have been doing a bang-up job, man. I mean, they roll out new designs and new gear and new items and new products every week, and it's outstanding stuff. I got the Warm Up the Victory Light shirt on tonight, which is a personal favorite, partially because I don't have a lot of yellow shirts, partially because I like the design. It's got sort of the old school helmet on it, and partially because it's just super comfortable. It's a soft shirt, and that's the thing about Homefield Apparel is they have these cool designs, they have these cool looks, they have these cool graphics, inspired by a school's history, and really kind of feeding off the fans and giving the fans the kind of looks that they want, the kind of graphics and markings and products that they want. And then they put on a really high quality shirt or a sweatshirt. I've got a University of Hawaii sweatshirt from Homefield.com, and it's the softest sweatshirt I own. This t-shirt is super soft. It fits well. It holds its shape, which, you guys who listen to the podcast all the time or you tune into the live stream weekly, you've heard me go on a spiel about Homefield apparel before. One thing I don't know if I give enough credit to or if I talk about enough with Homefield is there's nothing worse than a t-shirt that you wash it a couple times and it starts losing its shape. It starts fanning out at the bottom or the sleeves or the neck or whatever. And I hate that because you get a great shirt and then it loses its shape. And you're like, what? Come on, man. And you still wear it because, you only have so many t-shirts, right? But Homefield, this thing, I've washed it a bunch of times because I've worn it a bunch of times, and you can go look. There's video evidence of me wearing it, all these podcasts, when I've worn this shirt or some of the other Homefield gear I have, and they hold their shape. Even the hoodie, even the sweatshirt holds its shape. So Homefieldapparel.com. You got to go check them out. We're going to have a special coming up with them, I think in a week or two. We've got a special deal we're going to offer with Homefield Apparel, so keep an eye out for that. Either on our Twitter at Panther-Lair, Pantherlair, or at Panther-Lair.com. And we'll certainly talk about it here on the podcast. But Homefieldapparel.com, they support the podcast. You need to support them. They're a great company, and they make a great product. Pitt stuff and a lot of other schools, too. So you need to go check that out. All right. We got to talk about Pitt basketball. And I can understand if you don't want to. I can understand if you don't want to talk about Pitt basketball because it's been a rough ride. I want to sit here and say it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that they beat Duke. I want to sit here and say that it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that we switched the podcast around and did it on a Wednesday night because Pitt was playing Duke on a Tuesday night, and we sat here and talked about how good they looked and how far things had come and how far along things were. I want to say that it doesn't feel like it was that long ago that we all believed, and it was said often, both by media, fans, players, that Pitt was back. It doesn't. I want to sit here and say it wasn't that long ago, but the reality is that Duke game was on January 19th, and it feels like it might have been on January 19th, 2019. It feels so long ago that it's hard to even remember what we were thinking at that time. And I always try to be cautious about not getting too high with the highs, not getting too low with the lows. When you get a win where they look really good, try and find those weaknesses. If you have a loss where they look really bad, try and find those strengths so you can keep the balance, because ultimately over a 25-game or 30-game season in basketball or a 13-game season in football, you're ultimately going to have some balancing out that comes, and you're going to look really bad at times, for a lot of teams, not everybody, of course, and you're going to look really good at times for a lot of teams. Again, not everybody, of course. And the reality of who you are is going to be somewhere in the middle right now, right there. Okay, you're not going to be who you were when you were at your best. That's your best, right? And you're not going to be who you were when you were at your worst, because that's your worst. The reality of who you are is somewhere in the middle there, and it's probably what's going to come through in a majority of the games. But we get swept up in it, though. You get a couple good games. You get a couple bad games. You get swept up in, wow, they really are this good, or wow, they really are that bad. And so I always try and find that balance, that middle. And it makes me, admittedly, it makes me bad at sports. Sports writing, sports tweeting, sports podcasting, sports radioing, when I do the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan, because I don't go too extreme on anything, man. I try not to push it too far. This is the greatest thing we've ever seen. This is the worst thing we've ever seen. I see people do things like that. I hear people do things like that. I read tweets like that. I listen to people talk like that on the radio. And it's idiocy. It's ignoring years upon years of evidence that the reality of who a team is somewhere in the middle. To use an example from another sport, the Steelers weren't as good as we thought they might be when they were 11-0. They also weren't as bad as they looked when they lost to the Bengals, or even lost to the Browns. The reality was somewhere in the middle. And you see with the Penguins this year, Yeah, you'll kind of see it with the Pirates, although I'm not sure those highs will be all that high this season. But it's in the middle somewhere. The hard thing, see, everything I'm talking about there, it's easy to do that after the season and look back and find where that middle was of who they really were. You can look at the Pitt football team. They were a 6-5 team, which puts them, their reality of who they really were was somewhere around, not quite the Notre Dame and Clemson games, but probably not really the Virginia Tech game. It was somewhere, the Syracuse, Louisville, Boston College, NC State game. Those 4 games probably told us about what that team was. Not really who they were at their best, not really who they were at their worst. The middle of that is who they really were. The problem right now, the hard thing is when you're in the middle of a season and you're trying to figure out who are these guys? Because it's been made pretty clear in the last 2 weeks that they're not the team that beat Duke and swept Syracuse. That's not who they really are. The concern is, are they the team that just got their you-know-whats kicked by Notre Dame? Are they the team that lost by 10 and it might as well have been 50 to North Carolina? Are they the team that looked like they had no interest in playing against Wake Forest? We have 2 sets of extremes there, with the Syracuse games and the Duke game, and then the Wake Forest, North Carolina, and Notre Dame game. And I'm very concerned that as the season continues to play out, we're going to end up with more results that tend toward that low end. And obviously, this has been the big point of discussion over the last, really the last 2 weeks, but certainly coming out the Notre Dame win, or the Notre Dame game, I should say, that was supposed to be the get-right game. Wake Forest was supposed to be a continuation of the winning streak. North Carolina was a chance to bounce back against a big-name opponent, and Notre Dame was the last gasp, desperation effort, a chance to get right after 2 bad losses. And they blew every single one of them. Genius right here, and I'll own it. I'll own my bad predictions. I'm not going to run away or pretend like I didn't. I came out of that Duke game, and after the Boston College game got postponed, and they put Wake Forest on the schedule, and it was Wake Forest, North Carolina, and Notre Dame. I wrote in the 3-2-1 column that Friday before that game that Pitt, our 3-2-1 column, 3 things we know, 2 questions we have, 1 prediction. I wrote in the 1 prediction section that Pitt would go 3-0 against those next opponents, Wake Forest, North Carolina, and Notre Dame. And they would get to 7-1 in the ACC. They'd be ranked heading into this Virginia Tech game. It would be a big-time game. 2 top 25 teams, maybe 2 top 20 teams. Well, Virginia Tech has held up its end of the bargain. Number 16 Hokies coming to the Peterson Events Center Wednesday night. Pitt, on the other hand, has gone into a complete tailspin. A complete dive, a complete downward spiral, a downward trajectory, all swirling the toilet bowl. Whatever metaphor you want to use, Pitt is going in the wrong direction. And I look at the rest of this schedule. You get Virginia Tech on Wednesday night. They go to Louisville a week later. They got NC State a week later. They got Clemson. They got at Virginia. They got at NC State. And then Wake Forest, which very well I think is potentially could get moved, maybe even to this weekend. They've got some tough games coming up. Some games that are not going to be get-right games, like the Notre Dame game was supposed to be before they got blown out by 26. They don't have a lot of get-right games left, which means if they're actually going to get right, they're going to have to do it against superior competition. And what's hard for me right now is in the wake of this 0-3 stretch, this 3-game losing streak, I don't know if I firmly believe they can beat anybody. Well, I believe they can beat anybody. I don't know if I firmly believe that they will beat anybody. Because perhaps the most troubling part of this 3-game losing streak, certainly in the Wake Forest and Notre Dame games, is just the absolute lack of energy and effort, urgency. And that's troubling to me on so many levels. How could you come off a 3-game winning streak and go to Wake Forest against a team you should beat rather handily and just not show up? North Carolina, again, that was a tough game, tough matchup. We've talked about that. But the Notre Dame game, You need to stop the tailspin. You need to stop the slide. You know? You've got a 2-game losing streak. You need to stop the streak. And you've got an opponent that's ripe to do it. Notre Dame hasn't been very good this year. The only thing they could really do well is shoot threes, and you let them shoot as many as they want. You let them get as many open looks as they want to take. And you've done it 3 games in a row now. Even North Carolina attempted 17 threes. They only made like 4 of them. But they were taking the shots because the shots were open. And the shots were open because you weren't defending well enough. If you're not going to have energy, if you're not going to have effort, if you're not going to play with energy, or if you're not going to play with urgency on defense, then you're not going to give yourself much of a chance to win. What did we talk about early in the season with this team? I talked a lot about how they were really emphasizing and excelling at defense and rebounding. And not to sound too much like Jamie Dixon, but we said it a lot early this season that, look, your shots, your offense is going to come and go. They're going to be nice when the shots fall, and they're going to be nice when they don't. But as long as you play tough defense, and as long as you rebound well, you're going to give yourself a chance night in, night out. And there's a lot of IQ, basketball IQ, that goes into defense and rebounding. There's a lot of scheme and system and coaching and practice and all those things that go into defense and rebounding. But a whole big part of defense and rebounding is playing hard, taking your opponent seriously, and going out and giving everything you have. And they were doing that early in the season. They haven't done it the last 3 games. They got crushed on the boards against North Carolina, and they gave up open shot after open shot after open shot against Wake Forest and Notre Dame, and North Carolina. But especially against Wake Forest and Notre Dame, and those teams drained it. Our guy Steven Gertz, who does analysis for us on Panther-Lair.com, pointed out Notre Dame at a certain point was passing up open layups, had clear shots at the basket for a layup, and they passed it out to the perimeter because there was just an even more open 3-point shot, and they knocked them down. In year 3, with a team that's not, I wouldn't call it a veteran team, but they've got enough veterans on the team to have lackluster effort, lackluster energy, lackluster urgency, and just general malaise, and at times looking like you don't even want to be on the court. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And quite frankly, there's no shortage of people to blame in this situation. You can blame every guy on the roster. Really, the guys who play significant minutes, you can blame every single one of them. Justin Champagnie gets off the hook a little bit because he scores, but even his defense has been lacking. And you can blame all those guys on the sideline, too. You can blame Jeff Capel. You can blame Jason Capel and Milan Brown and Tim O'Toole. Every single one of those people is responsible for this. And every single one of those people has to take responsibility for it. Every single one of those people has to sit back and say, what did I do to lead to this situation? What can I do to help the team get out of it? And if the priority is not helping the team get out of it, then they need to get out of the team. And that's the simple truth. If there are competing agendas on this team, if there are competing motivations that are not the team success, then you need to go. I think it's that simple. And I'm not sitting here saying that is the case, but I am saying that every single one of those people, every player on the roster, every coach on the bench needs to sit back and say, what am I doing to help the team win? And if that's not the number one most important thing to me right now, I need to find somewhere else to be. Coach or player, they got to go. Because it's dragging the whole thing down right now. And you can name this guy, and you can name that guy, and there are certainly players and coaches who I think stand out for their culpability in this situation. But there are none that stand out as being absent of culpability. They all need to take a hard look at what they're trying to accomplish, what their goals are, and what their motivations are. And if it's not in line with, if the number one goal, if the number one motivation is not increasing the win column for the Pitt Panthers in 2020-21, then they need to seriously reconsider what they're doing and why they're doing it. Because the programs, the team's in trouble right now. And I would say the program's in trouble right now as well. It's a tough spot. They're in a tough spot. And if they don't pull out of this, they're going to enter next season. Jeff Capel's going to enter next season with some serious questions about where the program is headed. This isn't football. It doesn't take 5 years to turn around a basketball program. It shouldn't take 5 years to turn around a basketball program. You only need a couple really good players. You need to coach them up, and you need to get the whole team to buy into what you're trying to do. And it's hard to say, looking at the last 3 games, that this team has bought into what Jeff Capel is trying to do. Now, here we come back to something we were talking about earlier in the show of finding that balance between who you are at your best and who you are at your worst. Right? And you know, that balance, that middle ground of, that's who you probably really are. And we've got a lot of evidence of this team playing well. So, I don't want to overdo it with, this 3-game losing streak. Because there is the 3-game winning streak that came before it. There is, some really solid play. They beat Miami. They hung with Louisville without Justin Champagnie and Au'Diese Toney. The Northwestern win, whatever you want to say about Northwestern, I mean, they did certain things in that game. Really, after the St. Francis game, up until the Wake Forest game, this team played really well. Level of competition notwithstanding, because they faced a variety of levels of competition. But they played really well. And so I'm not going to ignore all of that. I'm not going to pretend like that didn't happen just because they've lost their last 3 games. However, they have lost their last 3 games, and they played like crap in their last 3 games. And they should feel like they've got something to prove as individuals and as a team as they move forward on this season. And it's not going to be easy. Like we said, this stretch coming up is tough. The Virginia Tech is really good, or at least good enough to give you trouble. And if you don't play your best game, you're not going to beat them. And they'll get that chance at the Peterson Event Center on Wednesday night. What's that game? 7 o'clock. See it on the regional sports networks. Got a few comments and questions already jumping in here. Talk is Pitt. Really, Talk is Pitt is one of our commenters here, bringing the the insightful analysis. Pitt basketball sucks. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Follows up by saying that Duke win was pure luck. I don't think that Duke win was pure luck. I think they got out on top of Duke in the first half, held off a surge from Jalen Johnson in the final 18 or 16 minutes or so, and held on to win. I don't think it was pure luck. Wake Forest, I mean, would you call Wake Forest's win over Pitt pure luck? They win a 1-point game where Pitt misses a buzzer beater. They could have won the game and also missed 7 free throws in the game. But at the same time, they knocked down 15 of 32 3-pointers because Pitt gave them those opportunities to make the shots. So I don't think I'm not going to say Wake Forest won by luck. I think they earned that victory over Pitt. And I'm not going to say that Pitt won by luck. I think they earned their victory over Duke. TRR says, will Jeff Capel be fired starting with 4 consecutive losing seasons? Amazing he is recruiting as poor as he has and hiring an average staff. I'm simply flummoxed. I don't know what to make of it. By this point, midway through season number 3, I expected Jeff Capel's recruiting to be better than it has been. I expected Jeff Capel's on-court success to be better than it has been. Now, I think his recruiting has been pretty solid. Obviously Justin Champagnie in his second class. You started at the beginning. Xavier Johnson, Trey McGowan, and Au'Diese Toney was a heck of a start when Capel first got hired. I think getting Justin Champagnie in that second class was big. And then this last class, you had William Jefferson, John Hughley, 2 highly rated guys. And obviously their fortunes, at least as freshmen have been, their fates have been mixed. The results have been mixed. But I think Jefferson can still be really good. I think Femi Odekale looks like a good player. Bringing in Ethiel Horton as a transfer, I think can still pay off, but he's got to get more consistent. But I still thought it would be better. I thought he'd be doing a little bit better. He doesn't have anybody committed for the class of 2021. And you look at where the team is. I'm talking about the recruiting results, but then you look at the on-court results. And I thought it would be better in year 3 than it is. And look, nobody's ever going to forget what Capel inherited and the state of the program that he inherited when he was hired at Pitt. And that'll, but the statute of limitations on that being a pass keeps getting closer to running out. I mean, you have to start producing. No matter how far the program sunk, no matter how low it was, you were hired to come in here and resurrect this program. And you'll get time. You're going to get some time to do it. I don't know if you're going to have a Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech type of leash, as far as a guy who came into a situation and really had to rebuild a program. That was a different kind of situation. Jeff Capel, I mean, he represents something interesting because he really is sort of the marquee hire for Heather Lyke as Pitt's athletic director or director of athletics. He's also, to some extent, her marquee move. You know what I mean? If you look at things Heather Lyke has done since she got to Pitt, and there's movement on the Victory Heights project where they're going to, totally, revamp everything, the upper campus, Olympic sports facilities, and spend a lot of money to do a lot of things. And that's a big deal, but it's not even close to even like breaking ground, right? Changed the uniforms for football, and everybody changed all the uniforms, brought back the proper color scheme. And I mean, there's no question about that. That's pretty. But in terms of, marquee moves, marquee decisions, things that Heather Lyke has done, hiring Jeff Capel is number one. Hiring Jeff Capel has been her biggest move. And she needs it to work, as much as anything. She needs it to work. And I thought it was a great hire. I mean, Jeff Capel checked all the boxes. Jeff Capel was what you wanted in a Pitt basketball coach on so many levels. And there's no question that it was going to take time to rebuild the program. But I think Jeff Capel was hired because it seemed like he was the kind of coach who could rebuild the program. An experienced head coach coming from one of the best programs in the country, deep in the heart of ACC land. I mean, it was what you would want. I don't know if you could draw up an ideal candidate to take over the Pitt head coaching job at the time that he did. I'm not sure you could draw anyone up that fits the mold better than Jeff Capel did. And so I still believe in that, but the results have to start coming sooner rather than later. And it seemed like they were headed that way till these last 3 games. Bart says, Jeff Capel has all my respect as a coach, but every year about 10 games into the season, a player is unhappy and they crumble. Does he have too much pressure to win on himself? Look, it's hard for me to say what's going on in the locker room at Pitt. I don't know. I'm not in the locker room with those guys. You hear different rumors. You hear different this and that. You hear guys, maybe like this or maybe don't like that. I don't know what's happening with Pitt's roster, if there are problems, if there are guys who are, I talked earlier about what your motivations are, whether you're driven by, team goals or other goals. I don't know if that's a problem with this team. What I do know is if it's a problem, there's one guy whose job it is to fix that. There's one guy whose job it is to manage that. Because when you're hired as a coach, when you're the head coach, recruiting is a very important thing for you. On-court X's and O's is a very important thing for you. And managing a roster is a very important thing for you, which means managing egos, managing players, managing young men, college kids, managing college kids. And that's a big part of the job. Jeff Capel, again, when you talk about checking all the boxes, he's a guy who was a player. He played at the highest level, played in the ACC, played at Duke. He knows what it's like to be in that situation. And then he spent, after his stints as a head coach, he spent 7 years working under Coach K, learning how to manage a roster, learning how to manage college basketball players. He needs to be able to do a better job of it. That should not be an issue with this team. And if it is, it's on the players, of course, but it's on Capel. And he's got to, it's on the list of things he's got to improve and fix. TRR says, how in the world did a guy who was hired because of his recruiting chops bring in such a, let me get your exact language here, bring in such a bad first full class minus Champagny? Well, let's look at that class real quick just to refresh our memories. 4 guys in that recruiting class: Ryan Murphy as a JUCO transfer, Abdul Kareem Koulibaly as a center, and then Gerald Drumgoole, the forward, in addition to Justin Champagny. Yeah, I mean, Murphy obviously didn't work out. Drumgoole sure doesn't look like he's on his way there. He's in his second year and has really shown no signs of promise. I think we kept writing that off as, it was an injury last year and that held him back and it slowed his development and all those kinds of things, but he's not really contributing at all this season. Abdul Kareem Koulibaly, I'm willing to, I guess, hold out hope for, I suppose. I think he shows enough flashes that you think, well, you're going to have a chance. He's going to have a chance to contribute. He's going to have a chance to be a part of it as he continues to develop over the course of his career. I think he's got potential there. But, yeah, I mean, not a great class. Let's see here. RJC Man 38, our good friend, chimes in as a super chatter, so we're going to get to his comment for. He's got a couple. We're going to say a couple here. RJC Man 38, we appreciate you supporting the podcast as a super chatter there. Says Syracuse beat Virginia Tech, so let's relax. The program's going to recover. Stop the whining. I think most Panther fans knew this was a 4 to 6 year project. Sure, I don't disagree with what you said there. Syracuse did beat Virginia Tech. It's the ACC. Pretty much anybody can beat anybody on any given night. As we've seen when Wake Forest beat Pitt or Notre Dame beat Pitt. Here's my thing, and you're right. It's a multi-year project. 4 to 6 years, maybe. I think a couple things. One, you can turn around a basketball program quicker than you can turn around a football program. I think that even though this situation was unique because Pitt basketball had fallen so far and faded so much from relevance, through the Stallings era and really the last few years of the Jamie Dixon era. But I still think you get 1 or 2 key players and you can turn a basketball program around a little bit quicker. Even if it's going to take that 4 to 6 years that you're talking about, RJC, man, I think in year 3, you should be past losing by 26 to a team like Notre Dame at home. I think you should do better than that. I don't think those kinds of games should happen. I don't think you should have the wild swings from the 3-game winning streak to the 3-game losing streak. I think you should be a little more even-keeled. I think you should be a little more balanced at this point. At this point, you should start seeing signs of progress, which it seemed like we were seeing. And then in the last 3 games, that progress seems to have been almost all erased. RJC Man 38 also says, I disagree. The contract extension to Pat Narduzzi was the biggest move that looks more like a bust for Heather Lyke. Capel will be fine. He's not going anywhere. Yeah, I don't think Jeff Capel is going anywhere. I don't think they're moving Jeff Capel anytime soon. You know what I mean? I don't think he's in danger of getting fired or anything like that. And part of that is because I think it's a big hire for Heather Lyke. Heather Lyke needs that hire to work out. And I think it was a bigger move than the contract extension for Pat Narduzzi. It's one thing to give a coach a contract extension. It's another altogether to hire a coach. And this was Heather Lyke's big hire. It's bigger than the baseball coach or the women's basketball coach or the softball coach or any of the other coaches that Heather Lyke has hired. And I think there's some interesting coaches in there. I think she's done a nice job. I like the profile of the coaches she has hired. But Capel remains her biggest hire. And it's the one she most needs to work out. Let's see here. Scroll down through here. S. Max says Florida State being postponed is a blessing. I think we can hang with Virginia Tech. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what Pitt can do against Virginia Tech on Wednesday night. Florida State game was scheduled for originally January 9th, got moved to January 10th, and then got moved to this Saturday, February 6th. It's postponed again. Possibility that maybe a Wake Forest game or something could be moved in there. Pitt has Wake Forest, I think, late in the season. They still have 4 games that need to be rescheduled at Duke, at Georgia Tech, Florida State, and there's one other, I think a Boston College game, at Boston College, I think, that need to be rescheduled. So they're going to keep trying to jostle these games around to get as many as they can. Out of those 4 games that Pitt right now needs to make up, I can't see them making up more than 2 of them. I just don't know if the schedule is going to allow it, but it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see if they do end up moving Wake Forest to this Saturday, and if Pitt's able to do better against the Deacons than they did, when they played in Winston-Salem. John K. says, do you think Pitt will go to the NCAA tournament? No, I do not. Do you? Let's see here. TRR says some of those wins earlier came with Hughley off the bench. That is now over with him likely gone. I don't know if Hughley was the difference, I think Audice Toney has fallen off in the last few games. And he, as much as anybody, in terms of an individual performance, I guess Justin Champagnie has been a bigger individual contributor, but Audice Toney was right behind him, and he has really fallen off the edge of the world, in the last 3 games, and kind of disappeared in scoring, in rebounding, just general presence on the floor. His defense, he's the best defender on the team, and Wake Forest and Notre Dame just got, wide open shot after wide open shot. So Audice Toney needs to step up. He is, if we're talking about individual players, it's Audice Toney and Xavier Johnson. Those are the 2 who need to play at a higher level than they have been in the last 3 games. But that's, I think that's a bigger problem than the John Hughley issue. Bart says, I'm only 32, but I have to say that Heather Lyke is the best athletic director in Pitt in my lifetime that I can remember, at least. 32. So how old does that put you there, buddy? 1989? We're not going to go down the list of let me see. We're not going to go down the list of Pitt athletic directors, but look, hiring Walt Harris, hiring Ben Howland, those are 2 pretty good hires. Say what you want about Steve Peterson and going from Pitt to Pittsburgh and tearing down Pitt Stadium, but Walt Harris and Ben Howland were 2 pretty good hires. You probably should give the guy credit for that. Jeff Long did fine. He hired Dave Wanstead. I would say his tenure was largely unremarkable, but I don't know. It would be hard for me to rank Heather Lyke against some of those others because we need to see what her coaches will do. You're ultimately, as an athletic director, there's facilities and there are coaches. And if you keep the facilities up and you hire good coaches, you are a good athletic director. If your programs have success, you are a good athletic director. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure how you rate Heather Lyke right now against some of those others, against her predecessors, because, I think we're incomplete so far. Let's see. Will Z says, sorry, but Capel put all his eggs in Xavier's basket, and it's bit Jeff in the rear. Dude just can't learn. Yeah, I don't know. Xavier Johnson's the point guard on this team, and he was recruited to be the point guard for this team. He was, that's his role, and that's been his role since he got to Pitt. I do think it really seems like Xavier Johnson hasn't improved all that much since he got to Pitt. It feels largely like he's still the same player as a junior that he was as a freshman. And that's, you need to show progress. You need to show development. You need to show growth. And I don't really get the sense that he has between, shot selection, decision making, whether it's on when he goes to the hoop or when he dishes, when he tries to draw contact. So much of his early success was built on drawing contact, and it just, it's not getting him the same calls that it got him 2 years ago. And you'd like to see his game develop and grow and expand, but it just hasn't happened. And that's a problem. Right now, Pitt needs Xavier Johnson. Like I said, Pitt needs Xavier Johnson and Audice Toney to play at a higher level than they have been, Justin Champagne's been really good. They need those other two guys to be better than they have been. Let's see here. RJ Seaman follows up. How much was Pitt's performance in the last game on fatigue? I think conditioning may be a factor, and having an interrupted season is not easy. I mean, sure, but they've been able to keep practicing. I think the program only went on pause once, right? And that was, in late December, or it was around the Duke game. When was that? I have the schedule here. That Duke game, December 29th, was the Duke game that got postponed, and the Notre Dame game that got postponed. So right around there, they had a pause. But otherwise, they've been able to keep practicing. They've been able to keep running. The Notre Dame game was played, on Tuesday after the North Carolina game was, on Saturday after the North Carolina game was played on Tuesday. That's a normal course of the season schedule setup. I mean, there's nothing unique about that. That's the way a season would usually go. And if anything, these guys should have more energy, less fatigue, because they've played fewer games than they would have at this point in a normal season. They shouldn't be suffering from fatigue. Maybe rust when they have extended layoffs, but I mean, they went a pretty good stretch there. The Syracuse game on the 16th, the Duke game on the 19th, Wake Forest on the 23rd, North Carolina on the 26th, Notre Dame on the 30th. That's 5 games in a row that were played in what would be considered a normal schedule. I don't think fatigue should be a part of it. And I think, I hate to read into things like body language, but they didn't look like a team that was tired. They looked like a team that didn't care. Let's see. Bart responds on the Xavier Johnson thing, says, I don't think anyone on this team plays harder than Xavier Johnson, but I also think that's what gets him in trouble. I would agree with that. I think it looks like there are times when Xavier Johnson feels like he needs to do something to make it, to take over the game. And that's good, but it's also bad. He needs to be able to make those decisions on when to try the shot and take over the game, and when to dish it and let his teammates make the plays. And he's got guys like Justin Champagnie who can make those plays. He needs to trust Champagnie. He needs to trust Horton. He needs to trust Tony. But that's been part of his game, and it's endearing, and it's awesome when the shots fall, when he drives through contact and gets the and one. It's great. It's fun to watch. It was a blast to watch when he was a freshman. But he's got to be able to make better decisions about that, because there are even times when he draws the and one and it doesn't, and it wasn't the right decision. It's not just outcome based. All right, I wanted to switch over here for the as we move through the show here. I wanted to talk a little bit about recruiting, because you may not realize this, but Wednesday is National Letter of Intent Signing Day. And you'd be forgiven if you didn't realize this. There's just not much buzz for it. And it's funny, because this would have been, I don't even know if I would have done a podcast tonight. If this was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, I might have taken this night off from the podcast, because I would have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow, for Wednesday morning, for National Letter of Intent Signing Day. I mean, it was such a big deal. I mean, they used to joke that, it's Christmas for people who follow recruiting. And it really was. It was a holiday. It was a holiday for people who follow recruiting. And even if you didn't have a lot of drama surrounding it, it filled this perfect spot on the calendar where the college football season had been over for a couple months. College basketball was going on, but Super Bowl usually would be sometimes after National Letter of Intent Signing Day, and oftentimes before. But you would just, there'd be Super Bowl storylines, but not a lot of competing sports headlines. And it could really sort of seize the day. That first Wednesday in February, man, it was all about college football. It was all about recruiting. It was all about National Letter of Intent Signing Day. It was a big deal. And the whole year seemed to build up to that. And now, like I say, you might not have even realized it was happening on February 3rd if I hadn't mentioned it. And part of that is that most of these guys, well, no, I mean, not part of it. The reason is most of these guys signed in December. It's been a few years now that since the NCAA instituted a December signing period, an early signing period. And kind of gradually we've seen that become the primary signing period. And it's, I mean, I say gradually, it jumped right in from the very first year. Schools were signing the bulk of their classes in December because coaches want to sign kids as soon as they can. And recruits want to sign and lock up their spot as soon as they can. This year, I was looking at the Rivals 250, the top 250 recruits in the class of 2021. 234 of them signed in December. So, I mean, you don't have that many of the top guys still available. There's a few. There's like a top 5 defensive end, top 10 defensive end, something like that, a 5-star guy who's still out there. There's a handful of guys here and there. But the truth is, pretty much everybody's off the board. And Pitt doesn't look like they're going to have anybody they're signing on Wednesday. I asked around throughout some of the other rival sites that cover schools in the ACC. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are expecting their schools to sign guys on Wednesday. Otherwise, everybody's pretty much done. This year was an extreme example, though, with the COVID situation and the NCAA instituting an extended dead period, so recruits couldn't go visit colleges and interact with coaches, and coaches couldn't go visit recruits basically since March. It really changed the equation. And I think there was a point in the fall where a lot of recruits were thinking they might hold off. They might sign in February because it seemed like the NCAA might lift the dead period and the recruits could take official visits in January and then sign in February. But then the NCAA extended the dead period past signing day in February. And so a lot of recruits said, well, all right, fine. Just going to sign now. And at Pitt, you've seen sort of a trend where, I think the first year or two, when they had an early signing day, I think they might have signed like 4 guys in February. And then the last 2 years, I think they signed 1 each. And then this year, like I say, it looks like none. And it's a shame because December signing day is cool. People still get excited. It's a big deal. Colleges make a big deal out of it. They have all kinds of social media things ready to go, and they have press conferences, and it's a lot of fun. But in December, it's kind of buried a little bit. It's overshadowed. It's not even overshadowed or buried, but it's not the only thing going on. There's their bowl game. It's bowl game season on that third. I think it's the third Wednesday in December is when they set the signing day. So you're in the middle of bowl game season. You're like a week away from Christmas. The NFL is in full swing on its regular season. College basketball is getting going. There's just so many other things to do. And particularly the fact that it's bowl season and you have the playoffs coming up. Signing day is just not going to get all the attention that it has gotten in the past, or that it got in February when there was nothing else going on in college football. It was the only college football storyline in February. Now it's one of many in December. And that it gets lost as a result. And it's unfortunate because it was a lot of fun. February signing day was a lot of fun. December signing day is still a lot of fun. Not quite what February was. And, that's just one of the things we've sort of lost along the way. And I don't think it's ever going to get, come back. I don't think we're going to get that situation back. RJCman38 asks, how many recruits enrolled in January? They had 12 guys enroll in January, 10 recruits, and then the 2 transfers, MJ Devonshire and Marcus Minor. Minor is the offensive lineman transferred from Maryland, and Devonshire is the former 4-star defensive back out of Aliquippa who transferred from Kentucky. Russell Amakuchi, Super Chatter, we appreciate that. Says, hey, Chris, just wanted your thoughts on the schedule for next season. Looks like Pitt has a good chance to start 5-0. Yeah, I mean, it's a realistic possibility. There's no question about it, Russell. I mean, look, you start with, what do they go? They go UMass, at Tennessee, and then had this all written out. I should have it right in front of me. They go UMass, at Tennessee, Western Michigan. Is it Western Michigan? And New Hampshire is what it is. And then they have Georgia Tech. They play at Georgia Tech the game after that. Let me bring that up just so I can look at it. Now, yeah, absolutely, 5-0 is a very realistic possibility on a schedule like that. Yeah, I had that right. And then they go to Virginia Tech. So, and I forget if I talked about the schedule. Maybe the schedule came out, I guess, later in the week last week, so I didn't get a chance to talk about it. But, yeah, every one of those 5 games is winnable, and probably a game that Pitt should win. They haven't started 5-0 since 1991 or something like that. They haven't started 6-0 since like 1982. But the schedule sets up for them to do it. Whether they'll do it or not, I don't know. I can't. I can't say they will. I can't say they won't. It's. I look at the schedule and I would say to you, look, man, a team with Pitt's talent should win those games. But I would have said that last year. I did say that last year about the Boston College and NC State games. The year before I said it about the Boston College and Miami games. I said about the Eastern Michigan game, which they won, barely held on to win. 2018, I would have said about the North Carolina and Stanford games. 2017, Carolina game, I would say. 2016, the Northwestern game, I guess. I mean, you can find a game after game after game, and a lot more in the past few years, where they should have been good enough to win. And they didn't. So, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to sit here and tell you, yeah, they're going to start 5-0. They're going to start 6-0. It's hard for me to do that when we've got, evidence that points the other way. So we'll see. They should be able to get through that unscathed, to your point. Kent Nicholson says, seems like Jalen Twyman opting out really hurt his draft stock. It didn't help him. I don't think it helped him in any way. I think he had things he needed to do and things he had to take care of, and it made sense for him to make the decision that he made. I think he could have helped himself with another season of game film, because he really has, one season of full starter rep game film from, the 2019 season. I think he could have he would have helped himself in that regard. But, I did see, he tweeted that he got an invitation to the NFL Draft Combine, which is like some virtual event this year. It's a little bit different, and so it's not exactly what it has been in the past, but at least he's still on that radar. And so he'll have to test and drill well, and Pitt will hold a pro day, I'm sure, and college or NFL coaches can come to that and see what Twyman can do, and he's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to earn it the hard way. Not that going through the season would have been the easy way, but he's going to have to earn it the hard way. So good luck to Jalen. I think he can be a productive player in the NFL. I think all of Pitt's guys in the Senior Bowl really stepped up and showed what they could do. Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones, Damar Hamlin, Jimmy Morrissey getting called in at the last minute to step in on the offensive line. I think those guys all helped their stock. I know Patrick Jones has been written about as a faller. He's not a rising player. He's a falling player based on how he performed at the practices for the Senior Bowl, but he was pretty good in the game. I think Rashad Weaver was too, and Damar Hamlin had an interception. I think those guys all helped themselves, and it's going to be fun to watch the draft and see where they get selected, and it's going to be fun to watch those guys in their NFL careers and see how they do. Of course, best of luck to all of them. All right, let's see. Pitt, Virginia Tech, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock at the Peterson Event Center. You can watch that game. Of course, tune in to Panther-Lair.com during that game. You can get on our message boards at Panther-Lair.com, where we have a live message board thread going throughout the game. You can't go to the game. You're going to be watching it on TV at home. You're probably not going to go to a bar or anything like that. So you might as well, while you're watching the game, get the message boards open and join the conversation in our live game thread. That's always interesting and always entertaining. And look, whether it's a win or it's a loss, it's going to be it should be a lively conversation. I don't think there's any question about that. Saturday morning at 8 a.m., don't forget the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan. That's my radio show that I do for a little hour of Pitt sports talk every Saturday morning on Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan. That's 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We'll be talking about the Pitt Virginia Tech game, talking about if there's any Pitt game that gets scheduled for Saturday. We'll be discussing that. We'll talk everything that's going on. We'll talk some recruiting stuff there as well, and plenty of Pitt basketball, of course. So 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., don't forget that on Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan, Panthers Insider Show. Of course, Homefield, Homefield.apparel.com. You got to get the shirts from them. They are the best. You've got to check their gear out, Homefield.apparel.com, for Pitt stuff and shirts that go with lots of teams, because they're licensed by a lot of schools. So go check out their gear. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight here on Tuesday night on the live stream. We appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the podcast through the week, if that's how you choose to do it. If you do listen to the podcast through the week and you want to get in on the conversation, it's every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m., the Panther-Lair Show. It's a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody who jumped in with questions and comments. We had a good conversation tonight. I always enjoy it. So I hope you have a great rest of the night. I hope you have a great rest of the week and a great weekend. We'll talk to you next Tuesday night. And, before you go, if you're on the live stream here tonight, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Subscribe to that. You'll get notification when we go live. You'll know when the show starts every week. So don't miss out, or any other videos that we post. So don't miss out on that, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks, everybody, for chiming in tonight. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun talking Pitt sports. We'll do it again next week, 8:30 Tuesday night on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Till then, have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.